Right. Well, Michael, thank you for that first session. And here we go again. I'm going to ask you a little bit about a faith perspective into all this, because here you are as a believer, uh, and there are obviously many people who approach social care and they don't have personal faith, but incredible care for people, etc. But coming at it specifically with a perspective of faith, how does that, let me make it personal first to you. How does that affect you as you approach your work, or does it have a bearing that is personal to you?
Absolutely. I guess a little bit of personal history is probably good to start with. I am the grandson of a Church of England vicar. My uncle on my mum's side is also a vicar, so is my aunt, and my mum is a vicar's daughter. And so being brought up, I mean, I was actually not really brought up in Church of England church, but evangelical and then charismatic church. But there was a family culture there of I think being in the Church of England and having this sense of service,
Yeah.
and that you are a servant to the parish, you are a servant to the people in that parish, and you kind of live your life towards service. And I think there was maybe not necessarily explicitly, but certainly within, we have family cultures, don't we? We have family ways of doing things and family ways of talking about things. And I think there was certainly, I grew up in this sense of service being really, really important.
Yeah.
Putting other people first being really important.
Yeah.
And caring for people, caring and loving for people being really, really important. So I've kind of grown up with this culture and grown up with that as a personal value. And also my parents being part of the inner healing movement,
Okay.
the charismatic church.
Yeah.
That also gave me a feeling that personal change was possible. This kind of feeling that you can change who you are, or who you are can be changed through going through a process. You're not stuck.
Yeah.
That things like trauma or difficult events or family history can informs who you are and creates who you are, and that those things can also be changed and addressed. So I've grown up with those things in the back of my head.
That's brilliant. Let me ask maybe a tangential question. Do you ever find how to put it, about your personal faith and your work? Do you find them like, hand in glove most of the time because it's care work? Do you find times of conflict? Is the conflict at the care level ever, or is the conflict sometimes at the structural level?
I find they mesh together reasonably well.
Yeah.
Or no, let me say it this way. I find that the practice and the value base of being a social worker meshes reasonably well with Christianity. And I've done, I mean, partly because I've done a lot of thinking about and being quite careful about how I interpret both my faith and my practice as a social worker, and tried to kind of find good ways of matching them together. In terms of the being part of the social care system, there are parts that I find totally difficult, but a lot of those are to do with not being able to, care for people in the way that I'd like, not being able to always make decisions that I feel are kind of moral, in a sense that there are people that I can't help who I would like to, and there are people who I am helping who I can't in the way that I would really like to.
Okay.
So yeah, it's that's the sort of dynamic.
And I guess, to be honest, that's the conflict in nearly every area of interaction with society, and certainly
Yes.
interaction with
Yeah.
structures, good, bad, or indifferent. So
Absolutely.
that's really interesting. Can I just take you on a little bit into not personal issues with regard to structure, but
Mm.
what would you see, headline to me, some of the structural issues that are really the forefront for you as you look at the social care world in the UK? What structural issues are flagged up as, wow, this really is problematic?
Um, hmm. I won't. I'll kind of describe them as dynamics, maybe, than
Okay.
issues or problems.
Yeah.
So there's one dynamic that we have in social care where we see it's called the social model of disability. And it sees disability as something not that we look to fix or change about people, but we, instead of adapting the person to life and getting them to function better, we adapt life and the environment around the person to fit them better. And this conflicts a certain amount with the approach, what's known as the medical model, so the approach of the NHS, which is fine. The NHS is great, and medical professionals are great. They just have a different perspective. They are looking at changing the person, which quite often is good. If you've got cancer, you want that changed.
Absolutely.
But they are looking at a kind of process of healing and change that's centered in the person. With social care, we have the person comes to us as who they are, and we accept them as they are, and look at what we can change around them to give them the best life possible. And that sets up conflicts between us and our medical and NHS colleagues, but also because I think perhaps the medical model is one that's more intuitive for the population at large and politicians. So we have to stand and advocate for essentially accepting the person as they are and changing the environment around them. And sometimes changing the environment around them can become difficult or uncomfortable for other people, and raise issues, political issues or whatever, for people that they don't like. So we have to advocate for that approach.
And if I've understood you are right, there's a divide there between the practices.
Yes,
in terms of
absolutely.
approach.
Absolutely.
So sitting here as an amateur, I'm going to say to you, isn't there a way that those could be actually work together? I not right and the other one's not right, but they've got a part solution to give, and let's see.
Yes, there is, and I think there is a kind of philosophical, maybe, or kind of quite a thoughtful way of bringing those two perspectives together. However, the difficulty is that the medical model has quite a lot more power.
Okay.
And so the people who are advocating for the social model have to stand quite strongly in owning their position and advocating for it. So it sets up a kind of confrontational dynamic there, because the social model is essentially trying not to get squashed. And also, I think the solution would be of bringing those two perspectives together would be to change the way that people are trained in medical positions, so nurses and doctors. If they were trained to have an awareness of the social model and to have an appreciation for its validity in conjunction with the medical practices that they have, I think there would be a lot more. I mean, we do work in partnership, and there is a lot of good partnership working there, But if you really want to close that divide, social workers are educated to see quite a lot of different perspectives. We see the way that the medical model approaches. We don't need more of that. We need people to kind of see our perspective as well, sort of thing. So yeah, but there also needs to be kind of a kind of leveling out in power dynamics and also money. The NHS is amazingly well funded, and local authorities are fragmented off in their own. There isn't one body in our society that represents social care. There's lots of small little little councils who are all fighting for their own position, and have their own small little pots of funding, so that there is very much a kind of big NHS versus small councils dynamic, which also makes it quite difficult.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely fascinating. And Michael, to be honest, this is coming with as news to me, getting behind the scene, the structures, etc. Really, really fascinating. I think what we're going to do, I'm going to suggest we wrap it up there, because I think you've given quite a lot of substance within that. And maybe when we come back, what I'll ask you about is, I know there are always proposals, good, bad, and sometimes not so good, proposals about reform. I'd like you to talk a little bit when we come back about reform, what could be reformed, and maybe to talk a little bit in terms of if you had a dream, what kind of reforms would you be looking for that might or might not be possible? But I'd love to hear that as well, because you're touching some of the sharp end of people's lives.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate that. And we'll come back in just a minute or two.